I'm going to do something a little different today and try to give you like the definitive how-to on bike rollers. I got my first set of rollers about 3 years ago, and like everyone else when I first got on, I was amazed by how different and much more difficult they were compared to regular biking. So I did a little bit of science and I made a video about it, which you can check out after if you want. There weren't then, and there mostly still aren't now, any really good, solid how-to for rollers. Before we get going, I'll point out that I have about the worst setup possible for using rollers. My bike came from the time when people thought it was a good thing to do those silly, goofy road/mountain bike hybrids. It's heavy, I don't have any drops, I don't have it fit to me properly, and worst of all, I don't have clips or clipless shoes. Even with all those disadvantages, I can still have fun and get a decent workout from my rollers. And it's helped me develop some techniques and hopefully tips that will help you with your roller experience. First off, use your rollers on a hard surface. Concrete, wood, vinyl, etc. I've seen people try to use them on carpet, and you can see how the cable and even the rollers themselves can start to dig into the carpet. Aside from making your life just way too difficult, it also leaves some pretty gnarly marks and stains on your carpet. If you don't have any hard surfaces, get one. I have a piece of plywood here that I put down under my rollers, but you could use MDF, and if you're really ballsy, even a few 2x4s would be better than carpet. Next, you want to make sure that your tires are really pumped up. When it comes to rollers, higher tire pressure leads to less resistance. I know. Rolling resistance and all that jazz. And while I'd love to get way more scientific about it, I don't even have toe clips, let alone power meters on my bike. So all I can offer at this point is my own personal experience that when I run 70 PSI, I struggle to get to 40K. When I run 110 PSI, 50K is fun and it's easy. In terms of setting up the rollers themselves, follow the instructions that came with yours. Or if you're like me and you got your second hand, really the only main thing to be concerned about is the placement of the front roller relative to your front wheel axle. Position the roller axle to be slightly forward of your wheel axle. You want it to be as close as you can get it to directly underneath the front axle without going behind. If you put it behind, your bike will always want to roll forward off the rollers. Some people suggest that the roller axle should be directly beneath the wheel axle, but unless you're really lucky, that's unlikely to happen. And now that I'm looking at mine, I've noticed that despite it being all the way forward, it is actually a little bit behind, which could contribute to some of the difficulties that I've been having with my rollers. Just a little bit. When you get started on rollers, you're going to fall. So if you have any doubts about being able to clip out quickly, I suggest getting some old school flat pedals and basic runners like I have to learn with. Even the fine folks over at GCN have had accidents from time to time. Oh, the last thing to think about before you try to get on is where you want to actually put the rollers. Some people suggest doorways. I started with the telepole in my basement. You can use walls, you can use counters. The point is having something that you can either lean on or grab on once you start to lose balance, because you will lose balance. If you start in a door, you can work yourself to a wall or a counter later on. After that, the easiest thing for me was just to have a small step stool. Once you're up, you'll notice that the faster your wheels are turning, the more stable you feel. This has to do with how much total energy is in the system. Something I've seen most videos get totally wrong is they say you have to get your cadence up quickly, and that will make you more stable. It won't, especially if you're on flat pedals. Rollers are really good at accentuating errors. So if your pedal stroke isn't even, if you're pushing down more than you're pulling up, you're probably going to run off the front of the rollers. And it's much worse if you get up out of the saddle. Something that's generally agreed you just don't do on rollers. I did find one guy doing it, but you can see he's just standing, riding, instead of moving his weight forward to drive down harder, which for me has always been the point of getting out of the saddle. So, all that said, when you're starting out, you want tire speed, not leg speed. Gear up faster than you would normally so you can get more speed with less cadence. Pedal at a rate you can maintain control of, and just spend some time in that speed. I'm talking about cadence a lot here because that's been one of the best things that I've been able to take away from my time on rollers. Higher cadence, for me, is much better, regardless of what I'm doing. And being able to experiment in a controlled way with your cadence can help you learn your strengths and weaknesses much more effectively than when you're out on the road. Finally, it's time to learn how to get onto the rollers without using a balance assist like a post or a stool. I've seen people mostly talk about getting a lot of speed and getting into the saddle as quickly as they can, which is half true at best. I'll come back to that in a minute. Speed helps, and if you're not using flats, it's easy to get speed. I'm using flats though, so I have to deal with slow. As with being on the road, going slower on rollers is more difficult, but I found it was key for me to being able to get up onto the rollers without using the balance assist. Do some slow speed drills, and I mean slow. See how slow you can maintain without losing balance and practice that. When you go from starting to riding, you're going to be starting slow, even with clips, so your ability to balance at slow speeds is key. Now, I've seen people get speed up while sitting on the crossbar and then move up into the seat. I've seen them get speed up and then go straight into the saddle. I go slow and then I get up on the bike. The main thing that no one has really talked about yet, that I can find on YouTube anyway, is that your transition from standing in front of your seat to sitting on the seat needs to be a lot slower than you think. If you're going to try to get seated too quickly, you're going to push the bike off the front of the rollers. This all boils down to your momentum being greater than the momentum of the bike. So if you try to move back quickly, instead of you moving back, you just end up pulling the bike forward. And that applies at any speed, and it explains why people can't really ride out of the saddles on rollers too. Moving your center of gravity forward makes coming off the front really easy. And when you start from standing, your center of gravity is forward. I hope this is helpful to someone out there, and if it was, you know the drill. Like and subscribe, leave a comment about which part you found useful, or more importantly, any parts you found lacking or even wrong. Remember how I said my bike doesn't fit? Oh, that actually worked. It's because I pedaled instead of shifted. Oh! Caught the thigh. It's the most dangerous video I've made in a long time.